It's now 5 o'clock and I'll call the meeting to order. Has everybody had an opportunity to review the agenda? Any additions or changes to that? One small item, I'll be adjusting the order for our council meeting schedule. We're going to move up a little higher, perhaps after or in the number 6 slot there, just so that because it could potentially have some impact on future meetings for how they're organized. So
I move we adopt the agenda as amended.
thank you, Councillor Jacobson. Other lights on? All those in favor? Thank you. And for our minutes from June 11th, any revisions to those? Councillor Hibbs?
I see no errors. I would move that we accept them as presented.
Thank you very much. Any other input? If not, all those in favor? Thank you. And we then have council mailbox there. I'm sure everybody's had an opportunity to go through and review some of the minutes and items that were included in it. Does anybody have any comments, anything contained therein? If there's no comments, then I would entertain a motion. Councillor Hoekstra?
I move that we accept the mailbox as presented.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Thank you. So given that we did have a time frame of 5:30 for our rezoning hearing, we're a little early for that, so we'll flip the page and we'll do our council meeting schedule item there, and CAO Gowdy will go through that item now, please.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Before council this evening is a recommendation in line with past practice to cancel 2 of the 4 scheduled summer meetings to accommodate council and staff vacation. The recommended dates are July 23rd and August 27th.
Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Doesn't this leave to our one very long meeting if we eliminate one? Or is this just I'm not serving prior to election? This seems to be obviously getting into quite ways past our 9 o'clock time frame.
So historically, you are getting less. There's less action coming forward during the summer because there is a lot of vacations to accommodate. That's typically when people are taking them. So we haven't in the past actually seen where they've been overloaded, but certainly you're able to reschedule them if there is a lot of business coming up. We can certainly reschedule them at a later date.
Councillor Hoekstra?
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I move that council cancel the Monday, July 23rd and the Monday, August 27th regular meetings.
Thank you for that. So, as our CEO said, that was the consensus when staff came up with these recommendations for those 2 dates because of the past history workload and whatnot. So, it's not like they're written in stone. If it comes down to it, we absolutely have to have them on those meeting dates and we'll reconsider. But until then, I certainly don't see the problem with it. Councillor Hibbs?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Could administration maybe just sort of refresh us on what it is that we are going to be tackling this summer? It seems to me that we are starting a couple of
important topics, so I would appreciate just a refresher on that.
So I would have to go to our strategic plan, which I don't have right before me, to know exactly what we've got scheduled for the second quarter of 2018. I know that we were going to be starting work on our bylaw review for both the level of service as well as the nuisance bylaw and some of those early. Does anyone else remember off the top of your head? But I can certainly take a look and see where we're at. Perhaps just give me a bit and I'll.
Sorry to catch you off guard, but I think one of the topics that we'll be discussing is the nuisance bylaw, which is going to be a fairly large one. And so I'm just wondering if perhaps we cancel the 2nd July meeting, but leave the 2nd August meeting in place. That's going to be a fairly large, bylaw to plow through. I think there's going to be a lot of feedback from the public with that, and so I just feel like we should allow the most options and then go ahead and cancel that 2nd August one if necessary. I'm just wondering if the mover would be interested in making that change, or if she's good with leaving it as is.
Councillor Gluckson.
Thank you, Mayor Tracy. I just have a quick question regarding that, similar to Talia's. Now, if that nuisance bylaw is probably going to take up a lot of time, like she said, but could we, if we vote for this positively and then we find that we are in a time restraint, we can bring that August meeting back? Is that not correct?
So that is correct. We certainly, and I did take a look at our strategic plan. We are planning to start work on the nuisance bylaw, but we weren't planning to bring an amendment, a proposed amendment to the nuisance bylaw to council until Q4 of 2018. So I don't think that cancellation of the summer meetings would actually impact the council's review of the nuisance bylaw. But we certainly could bring that if something does work.
If there's no other comments, we do have a motion on the floor that did, I believe, outline both meetings being canceled. So if everybody's aware of the motion as it stands, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? So, Ross, you thank you. Thank you. And while we're on this page, I think at this time we might as well do the Heritage Resources Committee board appointment, and I'll ask that our CA will go through that item as well.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Before you this evening is a recommendation for an appointment to the Heritage Resource Committee. This is Sheila McElwain, and that has been reviewed by the Heritage Resource Committee and is recommended for approval.
Very good, thank you. So everybody had an opportunity to review the resume and whatnot. Does anybody have any reasons why this individual should not be considered for this position? If not, Councillor Connaught, go ahead.
I would so move that council appoint Ms. Sheila McElwain as a public member to the Heritage Resources Committee for a term ending December 31st, 2021.
Thank you for that. All those in favor? Thank you. So the next item up is an AUMA award application, and our CAO will take us through that item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Before council this evening is a recommendation to endorse an award application with the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association for Sustainability and Collaboration. This award would be on behalf of the North Red Deer Regional Wastewater Services Commission and the members of that commission related to the wastewater project that was brought up and is successfully operating now. The award does require an endorsement of the application by one of the member councils, and as we headed that project, I'm requesting endorsement from this council.
I was asked why it was that we were initiating this, and I guess given that it was a primary function and we undertook to take over the management of the system, I think it's appropriate. Any other comments or concerns with that application? Councillor Jacobson, go ahead.
I fully support that, and I move that council endorse the application.
We'll see any other lights on, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. We'll proceed with that. I'm going to jump back to the first page there under unfinished business, and under financial services we have our 2019 budget timetable, and is our acting Chief Financial Officer DeBresser is here. If you can walk us through this item, we'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy and Council. We brought back a revised budget timetable schedule for Council's consideration. Pending last visit of this budget timetable, we wanted, you requested some public consultation at the forefront of the budget. So administration put together that we use two public locations, Music in the Park and Farmers Market, for the month of July as your public consultation. So we've done up a schedule. We are projecting the dates of Music in the Park on the Wednesdays for the 4th, 11th, 18th and 25th, or the Lacombe Farmers Markets on the 6th, 13th, 20th and 27th. Those dates are set before you. You can choose which dates you want to attend. We did think that you could alternate Music in the Park one week, Farmers Market the following week if you wanted four engagements, or you can direct whatever you see fit there. We also put some budget questions, survey questions, which we're hoping to run the 1st of August right through to the 21st of August for 3 weeks. The budget questions, budget survey questions are there for you to review and give us any feedback if you would like any changes there as well. The budget survey is general questions on kind of the level of service, whether they would like to increase and decrease, kind of give you a general idea of that, and also at the back of there gives you some demographics on who's completing the survey. We had also...
Can I interrupt there for
Sure.
a second? I'm just curious, how you propose that this survey be distributed?
Yeah, so there'll be two means. We'll have paper copies, and we could have them at the forefront of your public consultation in July as well. We can have them as a handout. Also, they'll be posted through our social media on our Facebook, probably on our website as well. So there'll be links to the budget process on our website. So we'll definitely promote it through social media. That's how we got our big response last year, and it worked out pretty well. So yeah, and we actually booked another half-day workshop on the 13th of November. That's just in case we don't get through the 2 years of operating budgets that we're proposing this year. So I'll open it up for any questions or any feedback on the questions.
Councillor Connick?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Just in terms of the questions themselves, they seem rather, well, they're all the same. Would you increase, decrease, or maintain funding for roads, police, waste management? I'd like to get something a little more, well, and the question, why? I mean, there are some people in this community that will say decrease say decrease everything, but that doesn't really help us. I mean, if you want to decrease funding for parks and recreation, tell us why. To me personally, I think that should be in addition to each question. I mean, I realize it might get a little long and a little onerous, but I mean, otherwise, like, what are you asking here? Some people put increase, some people put decrease, but tell us why you want to increase, or tell us why you want to decrease. I think would be more helpful than just simply the questions where they're written right now.
Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Pertaining to waste management, isn't that a fixed cost?
Certainly portions of it are, but not the entire system is not. No.
Correct.
You wanna elaborate on that at all?
Sure. I think what you're probably referring to is the requisition from the Lacombe Regional Solid Waste Commission. That is a fixed cost to the city of Lacombe based on a per capita requisition. But we do have some variable costs internally beyond that. The types of trucks we use, our own internal staff, that sort of thing, for collection within the community.
I guess for one question, I was kind of thinking of for waste management, and I guess I take this for granted. Just my wife and I in our household, we don't have children that would increase. But I mean, for ourselves, we could go 2-3 weeks and not fill our roller dumpster. Could we go to 10 days instead of 7 days to reduce our costs? Like something creative, something more of a creative question. Like, could we increase the number of days between to reduce cost? So like when you have rollouts, like and I'm speaking personally for our, but that's not going to be the same for other people because we don't have children, so and so forth. But could we go 10 days instead of 7?
So I think that's very valid. My only concern is if we go into that level of detail on each service area that the city provides, this becomes a much more onerous document for the public to fill out, and likely we would get very little response. Where I think that would be suitable is we have in the strategic plan, there's a strategic goal to complete a review of the solid waste system and the way we're handling solid waste within the community, and I think we would want to do that level of depth of consultation in that process.
Thank you. Just one more suggestion is, as Councillor Connick is elaborating as to ask why, could we possibly then say, do you care to provide any further comments or suggestions? There might be ideas out there that rather than just increase, decrease is too straightforward. Because I think there's some great citizens that have some wonderful ideas that could that somebody hasn't thought of. So just I think there's opportunity to be each area to be elaborated on more.
So, Justin, can you give us an idea of what the uptake on this has been in the past? Like, have you gleaned some valuable data from this, or is this just an exercise that we go through? What's the deal?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned in the memo there that 2018 we had 383 submissions. We formulated that back into a report mid-August last year, and that information was provided back to council. This year we're taking on a different format. We're asking kind of the level of service, increase, decrease, and we're trying to keep it simple in the terms of collecting the data, but definitely if you would like to see a reasoning for change underneath each question, and they can provide some extra feedback, we can definitely accommodate that. I would just caution that your comments may get large, and there will be, most people like to kind of express why they like their changes. So we have found in the past that when we do give those open text boxes in surveys, that they can provide a lot of information and some good information in there as well.
So that number, the 383, I mean, that doesn't sound particularly huge, but the surveys in general, that's really not, that's a fairly decent response, is it not?
It is. I was surprised last year on the response that we did get, maybe because it was the second year of undertaking, and the third year may be even better. I think the big thing with surveys is showing the public that you're using the information after the fact. You can grab all this information, as long as it drives some decisions with the budgeting process. I think there's benefit and if we can communicate that benefit back through the budget process, definitely the intake and the response will kind of grow year over year.
Thank you. myself, I certainly don't have any problem taking the input from the public, but I think that receiving that face-to-face through some of these other venues might prove to be a little more useful than receiving a bunch of essays, but certainly up to council to decide. Councillor Hibbs?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So at the very beginning of this survey, there's some information given. Is that correct? Because I don't notice that it says that here, but like, for example, current funding levels would be shared. Is that so that people have an idea kind of, what is being funded right now? Because it's hard to say whether it's up or down if you don't actually know what the current dollars are.
Please go ahead.
So for sure, there will be a presentation put together so that when it goes out to the public, they understand what we're looking for, what we're asking for. I think just to tag on Justin's comment, the reason that we're asking, when we go to citizens, what we're talking about, are you feeling underserved or overserved? And the actual specifics of how things might change, administration would figure out once council has identified the budget allocations that you will make to different service areas. So the intent of this survey is to provide council with an idea of what people are feeling around levels of service. And so whether we agree with that or people agree with each other is sort of irrelevant. It's that we get to come back and say, out of 400 responses, 300 people are feeling very underserved on the roads, or whatever we hear. And then the goal is for council to take that into consideration when you are deliberating budgets.
In as much as I like the forthright attitude of letting people know we're spending, I think that will be so confusing for most people that the information that we receive back will be skewed in such a way that we won't find it that useful by having the numbers in there. So I mean, as much as I see the reasoning for the increase, decrease, stay the same, I think that has some problems with it, keeping the actual dollar amounts part of it at this stage. But go ahead.
So thank you for that explanation. I guess, it's not only about dollars. I totally agree. This is actually really about service, but I think it is valuable to know the amount of dollars that are being spent in areas, because people are going to judge whether, that is, bang for their buck, per se. I'm not thinking that this would be in a very elaborate, probably similar to what we see in our taxes. A little pie chart just sort of gives you an idea of the breakdown of the overall. So then, furthermore, in regards to the option of asking why, I do like that, but it doesn't necessarily have to be an open-ended, go for as many characters. If you perhaps limit the amount of characters, it's not that I don't want to hear from you, I just want you to get to the point. So that might be helpful if you can somewhat limit the amount of characters so that people are very succinct in their feedback. And then also, I wouldn't mind the addition at some point saying that encouraging people, if they do really want to talk about this more, if those little text boxes aren't enough, if they don't feel that this survey is giving them the opportunity to really get across, and they weren't able to attend any of the the prior face-to-face, that they should be encouraged then to contact members of council or administration for that matter, but just to make sure that they understand that that option is still there, that it's not just fill out this survey and that's all we're going to hear from you. So I would like that addition if that's okay.
Councillor Jacobson?
So a couple of things. Just a comment on the bold question. I think you should also include eliminate as an option, increase, decrease, maintain or eliminate funding for the Volt Transit system, because I think there are many people who would prefer just to eliminate altogether rather than decrease, so I think that should be an option to see, just because if we see decrease, that may be interpreted as either lower level of service as opposed to eliminate altogether. And then also with regard to the second question, council has made a commitment to keep municipal tax rate increases to the CPI. I think that question should be taken all together. First of all, if you're going to leave it, I think you should change it to inflation, because I think CPA might be a little bit confusing. Second, I think the way the question is worded, it doesn't really give you any information, because if you disagree, what does that mean? Does it mean you think it should be higher than CPI? Do you think it should be lower than CPI? Why kind of thing, right? I think I frankly think it's a question that doesn't give us really any information. So I myself would just be in favor of taking it out altogether.
Thank you for bringing that one up. I never really thought of it quite like that. It really doesn't give the information, just yes or no on that question, does it? Anybody?
So if it gets removed, no problem. If it stays, I actually had this question started. I didn't have a chance to talk to Justin earlier. The commitment is actually to CPI plus community growth in the strategic plan also. So we'll see where we end there, but I just want to caution you that if we keep the question, I would want to change it to the actual strategic plan.
We also could preface the question with the current rate of CPI or inflation, which comes out on a monthly basis. We'll probably have, well, we actually got some May's inflation at the moment at 2.2%, but we won't have the community growth aspect in there.
Thank you. Councillor Jacobson, is there some wording that would perhaps elaborate on the increases or decreases that would give us a little more productive information that you can think of offhand?
I just think it's a question that's quite technical in nature and needs a bit more than just one line to get an answer back from citizens, that's going to be useful. I myself think that you can't slice it down to one sentence and get information that's going to be useful in policy decisions. I just genuinely think it should be taken out.
Fair enough, thank you. How does the rest of council feel about that removal of that particular item? That the east side of the room all seems to be in agreement with what we have over here.
All due respect, it still kind of reflects a goal that we're trying to minimize tax, but it gives an answer as to what our annual target is. I agree it could be simplified, because sometimes your question can be drawn out to actually confuse people more than directly ask the question, if that makes sense. But I think with our previous tax increase, the target was the rate of inflation, which I think as this new council, that's our goal, to be fiscally responsible, but yet still having to try to have some identity that we're trying to be within that target. So I don't know if there's a way to simplify it so it's better understood, or I agree with Councillor Jacobson, but I still think it sets a precedent with this council as to a target and a purpose of what our platforms were.
Councillor Hoekstra, were you in agreement of removing that item, or I saw your head nodding, but I wasn't sure what you meant?
I was in agreement with Councillor Jacobson.
And Councillor Ellison?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I personally think that it shouldn't even be a question. It should be a statement that this is our goal to meet that, and with their information that they will provide us will give us an opportunity to do that. So I don't think it should be a question. I think it should be a statement saying that that's the goal of this council.
Okay, so we're going to remove the question then. And is everybody in favor of a brief overall statement explaining our wishes to remain within that inflationary target?
Well, if we're going to make a statement, is the survey the best place to do it, though? Shouldn't we make that as part of our budget proposal when we do that?
It's a question that we're here to ask.
Isn't that what the survey is part of the budgetary process? And our goal of getting out to the citizens. So this, to me, it'd be a perfect opportunity to make sure that the people that do the survey are aware that we want to maintain that low tax rate.
Director Vaughn?
We could certainly include this information in an introduction that says this is part of council's budget preparation process, and it's including all these different ways that they want to hear from individuals, and here are the commitments that you've made to date. We could talk about the CPI, we could put an example in, we could talk about, you know, a 1% tax increase nets X amount of dollars based on 2017 data, a 2.2% CPI on 2017 budget would be this much money. So we could create some context in the introduction, if that would help.
Go ahead, Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I guess I do like that idea. The only thing that I would caution is about the example, and you mentioned this as well about you know, showing maybe what maize is. But I think that if we're actually using, as is stated here, August 2018, that is going to be a different number, and I hate to get people excited about whatever May happens to be, because it does fluctuate. If you look at ours for Alberta, it was really low at the beginning of the year, and then it jumped, and then it came back down, so it's all over the place. So I'd rather use either the number or don't use a number, but certainly explain you know, why you would use you know, the CPI. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Connaught. Go ahead.
And I would agree with Councillor Hibbs. I think it's a little dangerous to put a fixed number in there, because you think you're setting yourself up for failure, because you don't know really what that number is going to be or look like. But I do like Director Vaughn's approach for just giving some information and just leaving it at that. But no, don't put some sort of blanket statement in here, because I don't, you know, as lofty as our intentions may be, we may not hit that target. Who knows, right? So why set ourselves up already?
Are you confused yet? Okay, that's a good thing. I'm just wondering if we can take a moment here to go down the list a little bit. Under economic development, the first question, would you increase, decrease, or maintain funding for initiatives to increase the city's commercial tax base? I'm not really sure that that's going to mean a whole lot to the general public at large, is it? To even appreciate what the question even means? Go ahead, Director Vaughn.
I think what this question would refer to is, I think council has a strategic objective of balancing out the residential versus commercial tax rate formula or quotients. And so again, maybe we need to provide some context in the and do some linking within the introduction to council strategic plan, because I believe that's all part of where you're trying to get. And so it's regrettable we don't have that this evening, but you know, let us maybe put together the package and build some of this context for you and see if we can answer some of these questions for you.
I would certainly appreciate that, because the way this is worded here, I don't think that most people are really going to understand what the heck it is we're getting at. To maintain funding for initiatives to increase the tax base, I don't think it means a lot to most folks. So, Councillor Ross, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. And I agree with you. It's just, do you put a statement upon Cape Exapa economic development? Do we increase what we have discussed as a strategic plan goal, and so that the questions are more understood as the direction? Is this what Director Vaughn is saying? And yet, you know, it has to have some information as to have an understanding of the question.
So I do think, again, just back to my earlier comment, I think the longer you make these, and so if you're having couching statements that link to the strategic plan at the beginning of every question, and then a open-ended box, or even it's limited to 250 characters or whatever, I think the responses that we get will be great quality, but I don't anticipate exceeding 400 responses, as we would like to see, if it is this multi-page, half-hour ordeal. People just are not, they're not going to engage in it.
There's a balance between two questions.
Do we want to wrap this item up? Is there any, I think we've given some good direction at this point in time. Is there any other specifics that we need to go through?
Yeah, just one final thing is some direction on what events you would like to, would like administration to kind of set up the booth, at either the farmers market or the music in the park. So I'm not sure whether the communication will happen now or you just get back to us ASAP as a council.
We will certainly get together in the next couple of days, and I think just by the indication of who's willing to work where, that's going to tell us the direction you're going to want to go. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Good with everybody? Okay. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
So we're a few minutes past our 5:30 target for our Planning Development Services Bylaw 400.15 rezoning from R5 to C1. And I would call on our manager of planning to come up here. Good guess. I thought you would be handling this one, Manager Watt. So if you'd care to walk us through Bylaw 400.15 rezoning, please.
Certainly. We have an application to rezone property at 5115 to 5117 51st Street from residential multi-unit dwelling unit R5 to downtown commercial C1. Adjacent land use includes C1, R4, and R6 properties. If there's any improvements needed at the time of development, that will be the responsibility of the developer. On May 22nd, notification was sent to all neighboring property owners located within 60 meters. Notification occurred June 14th and June 21st in the editions of the Lacombe Express and on the city webpage.
Thank you for that. Appreciate the opening. I'm going to declare that the statutory public hearing is now open, and the hearing is held pursuant to sections 7, 8, 230, 606, and 692 of the Municipal Government Act 2000 as amended. And if I could have our legislative coordinator confirm the details of the hearing, please.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Mayor Creasy and Council, the purpose of the public hearing is to allow the general public to provide input to the proposed amending bylaw 400.15 to rezone lots 4 and 5, block 11, plan RN 1A from residential multi-unit dwelling district R5 to downtown commercial district C1 as shown on the advertised map. For section 606 of the MGA, requirements for advertising. The public hearing notice was advertised in the Lacombe Express on June 14th and 21st, 2018, and no written submissions have been received.
Thank you for that. I think we might have a few people asking why we're going over this item one more time, and we did have some difficulties with some advertisement in order to keep in line with the MGA. We had to go this route to keep everything above board and proper as it should be. So, do we have anybody that wishes to speak in favor at this time? Not seeing a mad rush to the microphones here. Give another call in a little bit. Is there anybody that is opposed to this bylaw? And a similar uptake with that. Do we have any person that's deemed to be affected who wishes to be heard on this particular item? I'm not particularly inclined to wait around too long because we actually are 10 minutes behind the theoretical start time anyway, so I expect anybody that did want an opportunity to speak certainly would have been here by now. Given that there is nobody here that wishes to speak, does Council have any comments or questions that they would like to voice at this time? Councillor Gullickson?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I move that council give second reading to bylaw 400.15 for the rezoning of lots 4 and 5.
Councillor Gluckson, before we, sorry, just a matter of protocol with the public hearing still open, we can't really go there yet, but I appreciate you. No, no problem. With that item in mind, I will now close the public hearing at 5:40. And if there was any motions to be entertained at this time, Councillor Gullickson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy, now that we're on board. That I will move that council give second reading to bylaw 400.15 for the rezoning of lots 4 and 5, block 11, plan RN1A from residential multi-unit dwelling district R5 to downtown commercial district C1.
Thank you very much for that. Anybody have anything to say before we put it to a vote? And if not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. So that was for our second reading of bylaw 400.15. Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll move that council give third reading to bylaw 400.15 for the rezoning of lots 4 and 5, block 11, plan RN1A from residential municipal unit dwelling district R5 to downtown commercial district C1.
Thank you, Councillor Gullickson. This is the third reading, so anybody have any comments at this time? Similar to the previous ones, so I will call the question. All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you very much. And while we're on bylaws, I'm going to ask that Director Thompson go through bylaw 400.16, our land use updates with the Cannabis Resource Committee.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Before Council tonight, bylaw 400.16, which seeks to amend the land use bylaw in response to the legalization of cannabis. That is consistent with the Cannabis Readiness Committee's recommendation. The Cannabis Readiness Committee land use recommendations were endorsed by Council at its regular meeting on May 28th. Details of those recommendations were covered in at that meeting and then as well as in the report. We have included two notes in the report, just want to draw Council's attention to. The allowance for permitted retail uses in the C4 district was a point of discussion by the Cannabis Readiness Committee. What was ultimately left as discretionary uses in the final recommendations. So administration is seeking indication from Council on whether it wishes to allow cannabis retail sales as a permitted use in C4 designated land. The second item is there's one site exception excluding cannabis production and distribution from an I-1 site just west of the airport. That is included in the bylaw as it's written today. However, administration is also seeking Council's an indication from Council on whether it wishes cannabis retail sales to also be excluded from this site. The landowner has been contacted and has no objection to either of these. Administration is seeking to amend any changes here will be reflected in the second reading of this bylaw. Another item that we wanted to highlight is regarding the processing of permits. When we wrote this memo at the federal level, it did not be passed through the Senate and through the House of Commons. So since then, the legalization of cannabis has passed through the Senate, and we have a date in which cannabis retail sales will be legal. So that's October 17th. And so with that happening, we would intend on processing permits as we would any normal application for any use within the land use district. We wouldn't wouldn't hold it up in any way. So in the memo it references, we would process them, do some preparatory work, but not actually officially process them, meaning if there's anything that has to go to NPC, it wouldn't yet be deferred to or referred to NPC. With it passing at the federal level, we would actually go through the process because we know the licensing for those stores wouldn't come into effect until October 17th at the AGLC level. So, administration is recommending first reading tonight and to schedule a public hearing on August 13th, 2018.
Appreciate that, Director Thompson. Councillor Ross, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I voiced concern earlier with the Winks location. I think, in my opinion, we're setting ourselves up for some scrutiny when you're within a block of Lacombe Compson High School and 2 blocks of Lacombe Christian School. And I just, for example, if that building was vacant, I think if that building came for a liquor license, I think that would be comparable. And I think it would be some public input in a negative way if that was one of the locations, and I still disagree with that. So I think I'm still a believer in going in things in a smaller scale rather than offering as many options of locations, and I still disagree with the Winks one in particular, that one as I brought up before.
Thank you for that, Councillor Ross. I don't know that there's a lot of people who necessarily disagree with that particular location, but was that not our ideology in this whole thing when we went into, that we were trying to make a more a whole community approach rather than specific properties? I mean, we could come up with quite a long list of exclusions and whatnot, but that was not really the route that we had planned on going. Was it? I'm just asking. So, Councillor Jacobson, go ahead.
So the only thing I'd say to Councillor Ross's comments is that, you know, if you were to, because as it stands right now, it would be a discretionary use for a liquor store, right? There's no exclusion for that. So if you were going to exclude it from cannabis retail, that I would suggest that in fairness you should make it exclusive for liquor retail as well too. But it hasn't been an issue for liquor retail in that location. So I suggest that it probably wouldn't be an issue for cannabis retail either.
Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Sorry, I just lost my place here. I would like to go ahead and make the motion that we give first reading to bylaw 400.16 as presented, and specifically presented today, specifically as presented, because I think that we have a public hearing coming up, and I think that's a great opportunity for the public to weigh in on what their thoughts are on some of the areas that we're looking at, you know, possibly changing, maybe site exceptions or et cetera, et cetera. So I will move that.
Thank you. Councillor Connacht, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. As Councillor Hibbs alluded to, this is just first reading. However, I would like to just quickly voice my concerns again, as I had mentioned the last go around, that I, for one, would like to see a clause written in here somewhere, and I'd like admin to maybe investigate this further. If other communities are maybe going down this road or not, but I would like to see something where, as I mentioned, there should be something related to population. So in other words, you could have one cannabis retail location per every 3,000 people. So in our instance, then we could have 4 and no more. Again, my fear is we're going to be a count of 8 liquor stores and 8 cannabis stores, and I don't want to go down that road again. Someone approached me just the other day in the grocery store saying, why do we have 8 liquor stores in this town? So I, for one, would like to see that investigated. I myself will, in the interim, look at other legislation other communities are putting forward to see if they're putting some sort of limit like that as well. But I, for one, would like to see that this discussed when it comes to second reading. And if it's not included, I will support the bill, but or support this bylaw at all. But just throwing it out there right now. Thank you.
Anyone else have anything that they'd like to add to this item? Okay, if not, we do have a motion for first reading before us, so not seeing any lights, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? One exception, I believe. So voted. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So, one of you alluded to a public hearing, so I would entertain a motion in that regard. Councillor Hibbs, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So I would move that council schedule a public hearing for bylaw 400.16 to be held at 5:30 p.m. on Monday, August 13th, 2018.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any comments on a particular date? We allowed one that we canceled, so that's good. Not seeing any, I'm going to call that question as well. All those in favor? And opposed? So noted, thank you. And I'll call on Acting Director Piché to go through our council legislative bylaw 459 for the council code of conduct.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Before council tonight is bylaw 459, council code of conduct. Council has provided the first reading to this bylaw on June 11th of 2018. Just as a reminder, this code of conduct is for elected officials to set out certain topics for a municipality's code that must include the minimum of the following, which is representation of the municipality, communicating on behalf of the municipality, respecting the decision-making process, adherence to the policies, procedures, and bylaws, respectful interactions, confidential information, conflicts of interest, improper use of influence, use of municipal assets and services, or orientation and other training and attendance. And plus additionally, there is a complaint system that should be outlined, and what we recommended is that administration should review the citizen request and response policy to ensure that it will comply with this bylaw. At this time, we're asking for second and third reading. If there's any questions?
Thank you, Director Piché. See a bunch of lights going on. Councillor Hibbs, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I would move that we give second reading to bylaw 459.
Thank you for that. Any comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. And Councillor Hoopster, go ahead.
I move that council give third reading to bylaw 459.
Thank you for that. No additional input, I'm assuming. Go ahead, Director Piché.
Can I also ask that it includes the rescindment of the policy for the motion, please?
No, we're not rescinding any. Of course you can. Let's have the correct. I think we're gonna keep that as a separate motion to keep it less confusing, if that's okay. So we have a motion for the proposed third reading of bylaw 459. Everybody's clear on that? All those in favor? Thank you very much. And now, so we don't get in trouble with our acting director, who's lights on here. Go ahead, Councillor Jacobson, go ahead.
I move that council rescind council policy 11-210.01 2015 ethical conduct for council members policy.
Thank you for that. Councillor Connick, did you have anything you'd like to add? Or Band-Aid? No additional input on that? All those in favor? Thank Thank you. Unanimous. If we go to our second page under new business, on a nice hot sunny day, nothing better to talk about than our snow clearing policy. So if we could have Director Thompson go through that item.
Absolutely. Before council tonight is an overview of the snow clearing operations that occurred in the 2017-2018 winter season. Snow clearing policy guides administration, and more specifically the roads and parks departments, on where and when to direct their snow clearing efforts and how that snow is handled, meaning whether it's windrowed or hauled off-site. The policy is a level of service document, which means it strives to balance public expectations with budgeted resources. I'll be providing a brief overview of the roads, snow clearing operations, and recommended policy amendments. And then Director Vaughn will provide an overview of the parks snow clearing efforts. Over the season, we received a moderate amount of snowfall this year with Alberta Highway Services. They're a contracted service provider that clears snow kind of on the east side and the west side of town on Highway 12 and through town north-south on Highway 2A. They cleared snow a total of 97 hours on Highway 2A and Highway 12, which is in line with previous years. City crew sanded roads on 70 days and cleared snow on 59 days during the season. Priority 3 roads and residential lanes were cleared once citywide. A broad summary of the comments administration heard from the public throughout the season are included in the report. Administration is recommending 2 amendments to the policy in response to public feedback. 1, adding a new priority 2 area, that being the lane south of the Lacombe Senior Citizen Lodge, which is currently a priority 3. And ensuring Telford Crescent, adjacent to Terra Ridge School, is identified as a priority 2. Administration is further recommending 2 amendments to the policy to align the policy with current practice. That being the commencing of snow clearing on priority 3 roads when snow pack exceeds 12 centimeters, rather than snowfall accumulation exceeding 12 centimeters. In order to maintain the level of service on an accumulation basis, we do anticipate that outside forces would be required to maintain that, and that would be beyond our capacity internally to maintain on a consistent basis. As well as identifying Wolf Creek Drive from 2A to 12, Highway 2A to Highway 12 as a priority 2 road, as it is an emergency access route. The police station had relocated to that area, and it's now emergency access route. And there are other amendments included in the report that are largely cleaning up the policy and updating the name of the Gary Water Group Sportsplex and whatnot. The city uses its social media outlets as a primary means to communicate snow clearing operations to the public, and included in the report is a summary of some of the social media statistics based on the city's posts for council's information. And print media and radio are used as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Director Vaughn to highlight the parks and trails.
Thank you. So as we've indicated, the clearing of sidewalks and trails falls to the Parks Department. And we're talking about sidewalks in 2 ways. And that is sidewalks that are adjacent to property that is owned by the city of Macomb. And then additionally, some of our trail system are sidewalks. So there's kind of a double standard there. So we, under parks, are also guided by the traffic bylaw, and it requires that snow be removed from sidewalks within 48 hours after the conclusion of the last snowfall. And then the snow clearing policy also applies, and the policy attributes property owner responsibility to those sidewalks abutting their property. For the city, we're looking at this, technically every boulevard belongs to the city, and so that if there's a sidewalk adjacent, we should be clearing that. And we are looking at the feasibility of that, and possibly the 48-hour rule might apply to a smaller scope of sidewalk, but that's something that we're going to be looking at in the future. The service levels for clearing trails occurs between Monday and Friday, excluding statutory holidays, and trail clearance is limited to asphalt-covered trails. Clearing sidewalks abutting city buildings, we do make sure are cleared within 48 hours. And occasionally this work requires, the sidewalk work requires us to work on the weekends. It just depends on snowfall. Existing resources for park staff for clearing snow includes 3 full-time park staff and 3 snow clearing units that have varying capacity. The following map illustrates the areas the routes that we travel when we are clearing snow. And we have established priorities. Downtown is the first priority, the second is school foot traffic walkways. Third is all other sidewalks, asphalt and sidewalk trails, and then the outdoor skating rinks. And then the practice is, if we have a snowfall, we start on priority 1. If we then get another snowfall, we stay with priority 1. So on the odd occasion, you could have an occurrence where we don't get off the priority 1 route as quickly as we might want to. But priority 1 is always priority 1. The human and equipment resources for the parks departments has not increased in recent years, and so this is coupled with the addition of new infrastructure and has led to occasions where the city has not met the service level policy of 48 hours. And when that has happened, it has usually been in the case of either staff being away or equipment failing or the snow falling concurrently, and we just can't get around to everything. So we estimate that we have missed the target 6 times over the past 5 years. That's not a consistent or excessive practice, but I think it's starting to point out for us that we are reaching kind of the edge of our capacity, and so we don't want to proceed knowing that we may be missing this service level in the future. Our goal is obviously to meet the service level 100% of the time. And so what we will be doing is coming back to council at budget time. We are currently reviewing and revisiting what we might, what routes we might develop around snow removal. We will look at service reductions if that is something that council is interested to hear about. We are going to look at our equipment and make adjustments on selection of equipment that will help us clear faster or more effectively. One of the issues is we do not have hydraulic pressure on the equipment that we have, so sometimes it's really hard to get down under the hard packed snow and ice and get a good clean. And we'll have a look at the staffing resources, and then we'll review the policy service level requirements and bring that back to council at budget time. So our purpose tonight is to simply give you a heads up that we're starting to feel some pressure in this area, and that we will be bringing forth more details at budget time.
Thank you, Director Vaughn. Just for a little clarity on our priority map. So Highway 2A and Highway 12 are both cleared by a third-party contractor. I believe this time it's Alberta Highway Services. Is that correct?
Yes, Alberta Highway Services, but through Highway 12, only west of 58th Street and then east of 2A. They don't go through the downtown court. We do that internally.
So for city staff then, the priority 1 is really not that onerous. It's the priority 2 that is a substantial area. That'd be a fair assumption? I mean, looking at this map.
In terms of sheer area, certainly priority 1 does become a focus with every snowfall, and so everything kind of gets dropped, and depending on the situation, either dropped or contracted services are brought in to maintain service levels. But certainly priority 2s make up the bulk of the length of the road that gets the most focus.
I've had it brought up to me on several occasions, and certainly every year after the first snowfall and when we're graveling. We obviously pay our contractor to remove the snow, and that's it. I'm just wondering if the practice of pushing the snow through everybody's favorite fence throughout Highway 12 is a practice that needs to change. It hasn't had a great effect on that fence. It's started to rust and look pretty tough in the areas where the fence is close to the road. I'm just wondering if we might not want to consider some adjustment for coming at it a different way, either removing it or the current system isn't cutting it, I guess is what I'm saying, because it's killing what little vegetation there is that we planted along the fence. The fence is not looking great. And we need to come up with some alternatives, I think. Or I'm going to suggest anyway. Councillor Glucksman?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. That was Highway 2A, right, that you're talking about then?
Correct.
Oh, okay, I thought I said Highway 12 for a second. Anyway, yeah, I totally agree that piling the snow against that fence is not great, but I don't know what the alternatives are for us as far as directing the contractor. If we can have a lot of control on that, maybe Matt can elaborate.
So we do have quite a bit of control. I think they are working for us. In the past, they worked for Alberta Transportation, but we took over that contract when we became a city. The issue is they don't have snow removal equipment. They only have high-speed plows. So we can certainly look at what the cost to do it internally and sort of do a cost-benefit analysis. I suspect that the early wear on the fence is the lesser of the costs versus us internally removing the snow on that highway. But we can certainly look to see if there's some other alternative we haven't thought of or looked at.
Yeah, I'm not going to suggest it's not going to come up with some cost for sure. It just seems a shame to have to replace it on top of it, but I'd like to know what the differences are. It's not too onerous to figure it out. Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Obviously, there was one senior facility that was brought up at great length earlier. Is there, and this might be directed more to Councillor Wickstrom, is there any other senior facilities under Lacombe Foundation that should be put in that while we're recognizing that one facility? Is there others that we should, recognize at this time as well, rather than having it be brought up, be proactive instead of, I guess?
Comments for that, Director Thompson?
Sure, just in that that facility certainly is unique in that its front door is essentially right on the lane, and so that's a primary justification for why it would be treated as a priority 2 road versus a priority 3. But certainly we are thinking about other areas in town where the lane specifically may have a higher level of service and what that means, and we're thinking like for instance paved lanes. So any lane that's maybe paved gets a higher level of service. So we haven't incorporated that into the policy yet, but we are thinking about that. And certainly if we identify other facilities that have a similar situation as the Lacombe Lodge, that may come up in the future. But this time that's the only one that we've really come across that has posed a significant issue for the residents.
Councillor Wickstrom?
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I don't really have anything to add, but because there aren't any other ones that are on a lane in the same lane. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Connick?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Just in response to Director Vaughn's comments about not meeting the target for the 48 hours in terms of some of our snow removal and some of our sidewalks, has there been any thought to just taking another look at the map to see where there are areas that we can not, like for example, I'm looking at the map now, there's that trail to the west of Elizabeth Lake, there's like a stretch there that doesn't seem to be connected to anything. Like, does that need to be cleared of snow, for example, or are there other areas that, I know it's nice around Henner's outlet pond there to do that, and I'm trying to think, is that the Northwest Rec area, I think, over there? I mean, are there areas that we can maybe do less of, perhaps?
Certainly that'll be part of our analysis, and we'll look to make sure that there are clear trails within each sector of the city or something like that, and try and maintain a certain level of service. But when we go in to look at reductions of service, we will come back to council with some recommendations. I believe the small segment of trail that on the west side, I think that is University Drive. So that is the sidewalk trail going up to Berman University, I believe. That map is hard to read. I
Yeah,
apologize.
when I look at it, it's south of the physical education building even, so I don't even know if it's, like the physical education building, I think is that little gray area there, and so to me, it's just like a sidewalk to nowhere, but anyways, well, if you're gonna be looking at it, that's good, that's all I want.
So that was an area of interest for me as well. I'm just wondering for that particular piece of sidewalk, if we couldn't come up with an agreement with Berman. They're obviously doing the rest of them there. It seems that's just an awful long way to go to take equipment for a little piece, for a little stretch of sidewalk that doesn't seem real productive use of our time. If an agreement can be struck, that would be nice. Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I guess this might be a question to Director Thompson. What equipment is maybe on the replacement list that could accommodate Director Vaughn to speed up the process in the first place? Because obviously better equipment is obviously probably more efficient than hiring more people in the long run. So
Yeah, we are presenting this in terms of just our more direct scopes of responsibility, but certainly we work together, and if there is a piece of equipment that is maybe coming off our list that could be used by the Parks Department, absolutely we'll have that conversation and see if we can extend the life of that equipment as long as it makes sense for us to do so.
I'm all for finding efficiencies in this, but I would suggest that, was it 6 times in the last 5 years is a pretty admirable record, so I don't think we need to fly the alarm flags just yet, so let's not be making the cuts too drastic in 1 year. Councillor Hoopstra?
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I guess I would like to echo that. Unless I live with rose-colored glasses on or something, I seem to remember when I first moved to Lacombe that sidewalks were cleared all the time, and that is correct. So there was never a time that when you went walking in the winter that the sidewalks were not cleared, and so it has been a bit of an adjustment for me to encounter these sidewalks with a lot of snow. So I would echo your sentiment, Mayor Creasy, that we don't look for too great a cuts in this regard, because I think it speaks to the quality of life in Lacombe when we have good sidewalks to walk on.
Councillor Connick?
Anyways, I'll throw the motion out there. I would so move that we amend the snow clearing policy as proposed.
Thank you for that. Any additional comments? I think just one little side note, I had an opportunity to read a study that was done out of northern climates, obviously, that have snow throughout the world. And it was clearly identified that the individuals that had by far and away the highest expectations were not only Canadians, but Canadians on the prairies, of all things, had far more expectations of both in speed of service and quality of service down to the substrate, gravel or concrete, whatever it may be. So I just as a side note, I thought I would say that because I was a little surprised and I just found it interesting. No other comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Notes here. The next item up is another one for Director Vaughn under Public Engagement Policy. Proposals there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So tonight before Council, we're introducing for review and adoption an updated City of Lacombe Public Participation Policy. And the updates are driven by requirements in the Modernized Municipal Government Act. The MGA requires that municipalities will engage stakeholders and that we will identify the types and categories and circumstances in which the municipality will engage stakeholders. And it also requires that the policy be made available for public inspection. And it requires that the policy is reviewed at least once every 4 years. And so we are presenting the city's policy, and we have incorporated the IAP2, I was having a little mind blank there, framework as the method that we will be using when we engage citizens. IAP2 spectrum is a continuum of public participation. It's where you decide if you're trying to inform people or consult people or engage people, and then you do specific things in order to do that. And so we are recommending that that framework will become the backbone for all communication efforts and public engagement efforts with citizens. And additionally, the MGA requires that the policy be reviewed every 4 years. We're recommending that the policy be reviewed every 3 years. And we're simply doing that to ensure that new councils have the ability, existing councils can review what they've been doing, and new councils will be able to establish new protocols if that is in fact their interest. We have published the information on the website, and that will satisfy the MGA requirements. And these changes need to be in effect by July of this year, and so we're bringing this to council at this time for your approval. I'd be happy to take questions.
Thank you for that, Director Vaughn. Who'd like to start this item? Not everybody at once now. Councillor Hibbs, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I do apologize, but I mean, this was a little bit of a late addition, some of this material. Is that correct? So I haven't really had a chance to fully go through it. Am I incorrect on that?
So I think that the only change on the one that was updated, to my understanding, is that we had originally included a rescindment of the city's public engagement policy at the same time, but actually they meshed together, and so there wouldn't have been any substantive changes to the actual proposed policy.
Did you have something you wanted to add to that, Director Vaughn, or no? Thank you. Councillor Hoekstra?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So what you're speaking to, Councillor Hibbs, so if we downloaded what the package was on Thursday, then it's not in there? So everything I'm seeing on Director Vaughn's screen over here, I don't have then. Okay, so yeah, I too have not read much of this.
Sorry, that was not my understanding of that.
The attachments.
The administrative directive. So that framework actually shouldn't be included. That is a portion of the administrative directive.
I can speak.
Director Vaughn, go ahead.
So the error that occurred, and our apologies, is that the wrong documents were loaded on when the agenda was published. And the error was caught this morning, and so to Councillor Hoekstra, that's exactly right, the change was made later today. In the original, the memo and the policy that you would have reviewed Thursday, there was, in the beginning of the memo, it indicated that we would be rescinding policy 61 something, I can't remember the name, and replacing it with this policy. However, that was inaccurate. We are not rescinding any policy. We are reestablishing an existing policy, and that is the policy that you see in front of you. What is in the package today that I believe Councillor Hoekstra does not have is the IAP2 spectrum, which is part of our administrative directive. Council doesn't generally see the administrative directives. Council sees the policy, and then of course the directives are under the purview of CAO Gowdy. And so our apologies for the confusion. But what is important is that you agree with the policy statement, the review period, and understand that we are recognizing the requirements of the MGA. So.
And I think that's perfectly clear with this council that in no way, shape, or form do we want to not improve our public engagement. But it was just a concern that some of it seemed different than what several people were looking at. Given that we're in a bit of a time crunch, we certainly don't want to be short on fulfilling our duties here. So, Councillor Hipp, go ahead.
So thank you for that explanation. So I guess really what I want to know is that the public participation council policy that I read from the Thursday package is the exact same one that was in the new version. So when I read that and liked it, I'm good. I don't have to make any changes. Okay. So just the rest is just additional information. Okay, I appreciate that clarification. Thank you.
It has not.
Wow.
Councillor Hipp.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I will then go ahead and move that council formally adopt the updated public participation policy 11.211.01.
Thank you for that. And certainly if there are items as we move forward, this is a policy that we can adopt additional ones or adjust them accordingly. But given this does need to be done to fulfill our obligations as far as the MGA is concerned, I think that we need to strongly consider it for sure. Is there any additional comments on this policy? Everybody's clear with the motion. I will call the question. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Have I neglected to go through any items, or are we down to reports? Reports it is. Who'd like to begin? Councillor Jacobson, thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I only had one item this last 2 weeks, and that was attending the rec board this past or last week. And the big takeaway from that is we endorsed the facility manager's proposals for their budget increases or non-increases. We had a 3% increase proposed from both the arena and the LMC, various increases from the pool depending on different time slots, and then no increases from campground and ball diamonds. So that'll be coming forward to council, I guess, for their approval at some point in the future. And that's what happened to the rec board.
Thank you. Councillor Hoekstra.
Thank you. So on June 12th, we had a Rikabutsu Friendship Society meeting, and it was a good meeting. There was new members there, and that's very, very encouraging. They will have a float in the Lacombe Days Parade, but there will not be any drummers. There was an expression, they were wondering why they hadn't been contacted by the Lacombe Days Committee. I defended Lacombe Days Committee and just said I think that was their role to contact Lacombe Days if they wanted the drummers. Japanese students will be visiting on September 22nd and 26th. I think everything is happening during that week in September. They are looking for host families. I was eager to potentially be a host family until I realized AUMA is also that week and how that affects my work, but we'll figure that out. And they really would like to have a trip go to Japan, but the twinning is kind of going one way. There's Japanese families or students visit here every year, but we do not tend to go there. So talk that up with people you know who might want to go to Japan. I attended the Volunteers of Distinction evening, very, very nice evening. A number of you speak to it in your reports, so I won't say a lot for that one, other than kudos to Maureen for organizing that. That was very nice. Went on a field trip. It's really fun to go on a field trip for carts. Went and saw finally the Mintlaw Trestle Bridge. I know that's not in Lacombe or Lacombe County, but we truly discuss this bridge every meeting we have. And there is a really strong belief that this bridge, if it was turned into a trail, it would be quite a significant tourist attraction for Central Alberta, and that would tie into trails that we have too. So very interesting field trip. Then we had an airport committee meeting on June 22nd, so this report was made before that. Because we received the grant, that maybe, yeah, for the runway lighting, that was a capital project further on down through the years. So if we want to, we're investigating, or Director Vaughn is investigating whether the grant has to be spent out in 2018 or 2019. It may come to our table here to see if we will provide the funding for the lighting earlier than it was in the capital plan. And then what I neglected to put on there is that today we had another Lacombe Foundation board meeting to approve our business plan. And I just wanted to share the top 3 priorities of the Lacombe Foundation. Our commitment from to get commitment from the province of Alberta to fund the Lacombe Lodge redevelopment. This has been in process for a long time. They ask every year in the business plan to please rebuild Lacombe Lodge. The foundation now has approved $100,000 to develop a preliminary design so that we could be almost shovel ready if we got the funding in 2019. Then the other thing that the Lacombe Foundation has as a priority is to look at a mixed market affordable seniors housing project in Black Falls. And then thirdly, to develop an establishment of healthcare services at the Lacombe Lodge. The Lacombe Lodge was set up at a time that typically healthy, able seniors moved in there who could care for themselves primarily, and now it has moved to a place that 50% of the clients that live at Lacombe Lodge access home care services. So they are looking at that would be a service that they would have in-house. So seniors housing is really changing in Alberta, and Lacombe Foundation is trying to be responsive to those changes. So those were the meetings I attended in the last couple weeks.
Thank you for that report. Just wanted to go back to the Rickovitsu Society meeting that you had there, and call out to the community that, as far as I know, is it only grade 8 students and their families that are eligible to host these students from Rickovitsu, or is it open to everyone?
Great question. Yeah, I think it'd be open to families that have a student of some particular age in their house, like maybe junior high or senior high. I know some of the families had high school students last time, grade 10, grade 11. So it is certainly approach me or the committee, and then they'd be open to anybody's response for sure. And by the way, kudos, thank you to Councillor Connick for agreeing to drive the bus. That was an important part of that whole visit when the students come too.
And also, along with that group of students, there are generally some municipal leaders and some administrative personnel that come along. And for anyone else that is interested in the community, I've had the honor of hosting a couple of times, and it's a very rewarding experience and a lot of fun. So hopefully there'll be some more people that are able to get a hold of.
Can we count you in this year?
Well, unfortunately, AUMA is at the same time for me as well, so I don't know if that would be realistic, but I certainly do recommend that people that are in a position to certainly take advantage of it, because it is an interesting process. And who is it that they should contact should they be interested in hosting?
Marlene McQueston, but I don't have the contact information in front of me, but certainly they can contact me and I will redirect their offer.
Very good. Or they could call City Hall here and get a hold of Ross as well. Fair enough. Very good. Councillor Hibbs, ready for your report next, please.
you, Mayor Creasy. Actually, just before that, just to piggyback on the report from Councillor Hoekstra, I would like to see the city promote this, committee a little bit more, because I think there is a lot of misinformation. I mean, we've talked about this before. It needs to be put out there, and I think that we have a role, even if it's on social media. I think that would be a great opportunity. So back to my report. It's there. It's lengthy. I apologize for that, but that's just the way it goes sometimes. I think I largely just want to skip down to, in the first part, down to community feedback. So specifically point 4 and point 5. So point 4, Director Thompson had mentioned earlier about permitting. I've been getting a lot of questions. I don't know if anybody else has been. So is it possible perhaps to have, maybe it has been already, but updated on the page on the city website, just a little bit more details as to what the next steps are for the city, pretty much along the lines of what you reported to us earlier. That would be fantastic. And then in regards to number 5, again, it's just that time of year. Of course, property taxes are due right away here. People are again questioning the assessments that they get. And so I just have some questions here, and I was just wondering if I could quickly direct those to administration. Fair enough if you want to follow up at a later date, but how often are assessments challenged? What are the success rates of those challenges? And does the city have confidence in the current practice?
So my time, the city is challenged perhaps once a year, less than once a year, I'd say, is average. In terms of success rates, I've never seen a successful property tax assessment appeal. A successful being a change to the assessment. In terms of confidence in our current assessor's practice, they go through a provincial audit to determine whether or not they're compliant, and so what that involves is that they have to actually look at actual home sales for that year compared to their audits, compared to their assessments of those homes, and they have to be within, on an aggregate basis, within 5% of the actual home sales for those homes. So we are confident that they go through a fairly rigorous and standardized audit process. Certainly on an individual basis, from home to home, there is variation, and some homes, depending on the finishes, are going to rate much higher than the actual market value, or much lower. But on an aggregate basis, we're quite confident in the provincially defined process.
Thank you for that. And then just to follow up, the second half of my report actually is from specifically for FCM. I think it's pretty much laid out there. If anybody has any questions, I'll certainly entertain them. I did find high value in attending. I did appreciate the opportunity. I'd certainly encourage whomever is available to be the next 2 councillors should we decide to do that again next year. I do have some material that I brought home with me, like paperwork from the various sessions that I attended. That solid waste study tour especially was particularly good. I do have a little pamphlet for that. I know Mayor Creasy has also talked about that as well. So I don't really have anything else to add to that, except for I do want to draw special attention to the fact that we did have every leader of every federal party present at this, and to me that speaks to the degree of the importance of this event. This isn't just a gathering of people just getting together and talking. Like this is high level stuff. This is opportunity for networking. The federal government's paying attention to the point of sending their leaders, including the Prime Minister. So I just wanted to make that point. So I will certainly answer any questions, but otherwise it's there.
Thank you for that. Don't see any questions, but that certainly was a detailed report. Thank you for that. Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So June 18th, we had a Macomb Days meeting, so we continued to confirm our scheduled events. So schedule's made up. We had a volunteer night on Thursday, June 21st, so we're very fortunate with some continued Facebook and social media that we had 16 people show up to sign up to assist in us running the events, which was very gratefully appreciated from those that showed up. June 20th, attended FCSS, reviewed financials and audits, and FCSS received grant for homelessness estimation grant approval, so that will take place. And Macomb Regional Tourism reviewed financial sponsorship grants and for upcoming festivals, discussed at great length the future of continuing with the Flatiron lease agreement, which currently is $30,000 per year. So there's going to be ongoing discussions of other possibilities. One of them being expanding the chamber building. So it would be a huge operational advantage by collaborating together both tourism and the chamber. So it was pretty. And also at Lacombe Airport, we reviewed financials, the STIP grant, responsibility of the city, cost sharing there as well, and changing of the name since the agreement between the county and the city, so that will be Lacombe Regional Airport. And I think there's also a sign with the city that's been stored that they're going to reuse. So, and yeah. And there's possibility of some future hangars be serviced with water and sewer to accommodate the possibility of some commercial development of some hangars. So it creates more revenue for the flying club.
Thank you for that. Any questions? Councillor Connick.
My report should be there. Oh, thank you, Ross.
I emailed you. I don't have it. I've never received it, so.
I emailed it to you.
Check with that. Same anyway.
You actually did do one though.
I sent it June 19th. I checked the other day because I didn't see it on there. And I emailed Ross and I sent it. It's lost in space.
Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. June 13th, I attended the Volunteer Appreciation Night recognizing board members that have finished their terms. I thought it was a great evening and the company was good. Yeah, it's very nice. On June the 18th, Lacombe Days meeting finalizing activities for the event. On the 20th, the MPC meeting with 2 items on the agenda, an oversized garage that was approved, and a garden suite over a garage that was not approved and went on to the next level of appeal. That's in my report.
Thank you for that. I'll just do a couple of points on mine. The Volunteers of Distinction, I think, was an enjoyable evening. The first that I've been other than as a recipient, so that was an interesting evening. I think that Brenda and Maureen did a wonderful job of organizing things, and thank you for that. Appreciate it. CAO Gowdy and myself were at the AUMA Leaders Caucus in Camrose, middle of June 14th. A lot of these events that we go to, there's some common threads through them, whether it's policing, cannabis legislation. This one had a noticeable focus around some First Nations awareness and education from a councillor in Wetaskiwin, suggesting the municipalities should lead in they felt was an extremely long overdue education process. And then there was a crime reductions and best practices discussion as well. So it was an interesting evening there, or day there rather. Glen Thompson Pond, I had lots of people ask, as I was not here, for the day that the Fish and Game puts on there to celebrate youth fishing. And just so everybody knows that I released an additional 1,000 trout there on June 15th, so there'll be more fish for the kids to catch, which is a good thing. And then on June 18th, our electrical contract was extended for supply from various suppliers, as was determined through a third-party from some third-party recommendations of who we should use, and I think I brokered, thank you, the proper wording, and while we had hoped to be perhaps saving in the neighborhood of $50-some thousand, it actually worked out at $35,000, which is still positive, better than costing us more, so that was good news. I'm not going to go through the next one over for the FCM and trade show. I just wanted to give Councillor Connick a hard time and suggest that I actually did one, so. All right. So, unless there's some questions, which there is, go ahead, Councillor Hoekstra.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I just want to comment on your leaders caucus in Camrose that there was this First Nations awareness plea from the Wetaskiwin councillor. It reminded me that on Thursday I went to a fairly significant powwow that was organized in Ponoka. I went there for work, but I was recognized as a city councillor, so if that comes up, it was my my colleague in Ponoka who organized that powwow. So there's a huge movement to recognize our Indigenous neighbors and to honor their way of life.
Thank you for that. Any additional comments or questions? If not, we'll take a short recess. What time we got here now? I feel this. Let's go to 6:50. I'll give it a few moments in case the press has some questions, and we'll reconvene then and go through our in-camera meetings. If that's all right with everybody? Very good.